Hello guys, welcome to Tech Keys X. Today's episode is about PowerShell and we are on episode 1. We will cover the following topics, which I hope you do enjoy. So let's get started. All the timestamps are in the description if you want to quickly go through a specific topic. PowerShell has some built-in variables that you can use and you can access them with the $sign. So these are automatic variables that PowerShell sets up for you. So you've got something useful such as like the home directory of the user. You can find out the PowerShell version and you can see I'm using the dot notation here. This is to access like a sub-property of that variable. So here, just this variable here is actually defined as a dictionary or a hash table. But you can see here, you can access it like this as well if you really want to, but you can use the dot notation to make it easier. So if I run this code here, and as you can see, we get the string printed with a version and last exit code of a function that you ran and the home directory of a user, and it's the last command successful. There you can see the version. Now I can make it fail, for example, last command successful. So if I just put something incorrect in here over here, and you can see if I run this again, and the last command successful is now false because this has failed because that's an invalid command. The automatic variables are really useful, and this is something PowerShell sets up for you, so you don't have to. You can access many more. You can access the max error count if Windows 10. So these are something that PowerShell has set up for you, and you can just use them. You can also access things like environment variables, such as computer name. You can access the home drive, home path, and all the other kind of useful things by using the $sign, and this is something that Python has set up for you, including location of the program file and so on. In PowerShell, you can use the Subexpression Operator to calculate and evaluate expressions rather than show them as string. So here, I've got 5 plus 3 in the Subexpression Operator. This will actually calculate and add the two numbers together and then display the result. Here, it's actually not going to evaluate it correctly because it will treat it as a string. So if I run this, and you can see here, it's worked it out correctly, and 5 plus 3, it's actually shown it as a string. While here, if you look at this is now pulling the version of the PowerShell from this automatic variable that PowerShell created. So here, this is being used to evaluate the sub property. So this is needed. If you just use it like this, you will get incorrect results because as you can see here, the first one, it prints out the correct version number from this automatic variable that PowerShell created. While here, it actually doesn't display the version number correctly. It just displays the type of that variable and then appended with the field name. You have another option, which is to use the variable here to calculate the version number before displaying it in the string that you write out here. This string interpolation will work because you are already calculating and evaluating this expression in this variable before displaying it as part of string interpolation. Now remember to use Subexpression Operator when you're trying to string interpolation, and this will make sure that your string expressions work correctly. So don't do this unless, of course, you have a simple expression, which is basically to display the output of a variable, and this would be the situation for any calculations as well. But just remember the importance of expression operator like this and like here, and you don't need it if you just want a printout of the value of a variable such as this. I've created this variable and I'm just printing it out here. In PowerShell, just like in C# and in other languages, you can use the F operator to do string interpolation. This means you can mix the strings and variables and expressions together and output them. So here we have the following string, and notice that we are using the braces here and here where we are picking up the values. So if I run this, and as you can see, this string has been correctly printed with values defined in the variable above here. And then you can also do things like this. So you can see that I've got the 3 placeholders here, and the values for these placeholders is picked up from the F operator here and here, and here I am doing an expression which is evaluated before actually being shown in this placeholder over here. And as you can see, this is the output that we get for this. Make sure you surround your entire string and expression in the F operator using the parentheses here and at the end here. So this is an alternative way and a comfortable way of using the F operator in C# and in PowerShell. When declaring variables in PowerShell, you do not need to define the type of a variable. So here I've just named a variable called string var, int var, full var. So these variables do not actually need a type. You can just specify the value within a string or other number or other boolean. And then as you can see here, int var, I'm replacing the 100 with 100, and that does not matter to PowerShell. If I just highlight this and run the selected line, and as you can see, I have no error at all. But you can actually define the type of variable. So here I have explicitly defined that this number must be an int, and then this variable here must be a string. And now, for example, for the number one, if I now try and assign a string, what do you think will happen? So if I run this code here, and run the selected line, and as you can see, we got an error. And if we look at this runtime exception, it says cannot convert the value 10 into int type, and this will not work. So if I change this value to a number, such as 10, and notice that it's still in quotations, it will try and convert this value to an int. So if I run the selected line of the game, and let me just clear the console, and if I run this here, and you can see that it has successfully finished the script, then there are no errors here at all. So you don't have to declare a variable type in PowerShell, but you can explicitly define it if you do want to declare it. And then later on, if you try and assign an invalid value, then your script will fail. So this is how you basically declare variables in PowerShell and whether they have a type or not, and what are the consequences of having a type versus not having a type. As shown here, you could easily change this into a string and PowerShell will not complain. In PowerShell, you do not have to specify data type of a variable, but it has implicit data type. So this means when you assign a value such as 42, then it will determine that to be of a specific type. So here we use the variable name and then GetType and then print the full name of the variable type that we get from this GetType function. If I run this code, as you can see, we get system.int32 to say this variable holds an integer 32. Next, we are converting the string value here. Notice the quotation marks of 100. It will try and convert this value here into the integer for this variable. So here you can see again, when we print the get type of this one, we get int 32. And here we are again doing an explicit conversion. So this variable, as you know, was previously an int based on the output that we received here. We are now going to convert this into a string explicitly by assigning it to the variable that we had above here, which we know is of int type 32. And then we print its get type full name. And here, as you can see, it's now a string. So this variable has successfully been converted into a string. So you can use get type and then you can retrieve its full name of the type that the system holds in order to determine the variable type. You can use get type to find out its type of a variable, and then use our full name to print the name of the variable, its type. The use of single quote and double quote in PowerShell is very important for string interpolation. So as you can see here, I am using single quotes here to print the version, and I'm using double quotes to print the version. Which of these will actually work? If I run the code, and as you can see, this one has not worked because it's using single quotes, but this one has worked. So when you need to refer to a variable or any expression evaluation, then you need to use double quotes. So same here, you can see that I am using Subexpression Operator here, and this isn't working because the single quotes are here. So you basically get the output as shown here. But if you use the double quotes and say 3 plus 2 with this Subexpression Operator to evaluate the output of this, then you will get the correct answer, which is 5. So remember to use double quotes when you need to mix strings with expressions or variables within PowerShell, and that will make sure that you get the correct output. In PowerShell, you can convert data types by using typecasting like this, where you declare an int variable type will convert the other variable that you had, which had a string, into an integer type. So this is one way of doing it, where you explicitly define the variable type at the end, and this is known as typecasting. Here, you can actually use the convert class from .NET and then call the static function. Notice the 2 colons here, which will call the static method of the class to int. So you do not need to create an instance of it. So these 2 colons basically mean call the static method of a class from .NET. Now, convert is a .NET class that you can actually use in PowerShell without actually creating an instance of it. So this will convert this string over here into an integer as shown here. If I run this, and as you can see that we get the outputs here. The third method is using the integer class from .NET and using the parse method, and this will convert the string value into an int by using the int class and using the parse method. So these are the 3 different ways you can convert this type in PowerShell, either using typecasting, using the .NET convert class and calling the toInt method, or using the int class and calling the parse method. Colons here basically mean that you're calling the static method of a class, so you do not need to create an instance of this class or this class. You can actually just call the static method using the 2 colons here, and this is a feature of PowerShell. In PowerShell, you can use the .NET class and use its method Try Parse to convert a string value into an integer. As you can see here, I'm declaring a variable called string number, assigning it a string of 400, which we know can be converted into an integer. And we are declaring another variable called result. This results variable will be passed to the Try Parse function here as a reference type. So by reference type, this function here will be able to modify its value. So initially we are declaring it as a 0, we are declaring it as an explicit integer. And once it gets passed into this function, if the Try Parse is successful in converting our variable here, which is string number 400, into an integer, it will assign the result of that conversion to this variable which we declared here and passing it as a reference. We are using these 2 colons here because we are calling a static method of the integer class, which is a .NET class. So remember, you can call .NET methods in PowerShell using this method here. And then we will output the result of this here, because this function will return a true or a false. So try pass, if it's successful, it will return a true. So here we're saying if this is true, this have managed to succeed, then do the following. If it has failed, then do the following. So in the first instance, we will pass it a valid value which can be converted. So if I run this code here, then as you can see, we get conversion has been successful. And now we will try and pass it an invalid value. So here we're just going to add a. We now know this cannot be converted into an integer, so this should fail, and run this line here. If I run this code here, then as you can see, we now got a printout of conversion failed. This means this has not been successful in converting the value 400a into an integer. This is a safer way for converting strings into integers in PowerShell using the .NET class integer and calling the Try Parse method. How do you remove letters ABC from the string and just leave the numeric part? In PowerShell, that is super easy to do. You can use the replace operator here, and it uses regular expression. So here \d, so \ is just basically escaping the character d, so you don't want to treat it as a character. Instead, it has a special meaning. That special meaning in uppercase D means it's gonna remove any non-numeric digits. So that means it will only keep the values from 0 to 9. So it will keep this part and remove this part from the string. But that's what replace and regular expression \d would do, and it would replace it with an empty string. But then what we do is we've got this variable here, which we're going to pass to try parse function. If it's successful, we'll input the digit part into this variable because we are referencing it, so it can modify it. If it's successful, then we'll get the output here. If it's not, we'll get conversion failed. So let's run this and see what happens. And as you can see, it passed, and that number there was printed, and we got the value conversion successful 1, 2, 3. Or yeah, just remember to use the replace operator in PowerShell to quickly clean your string using regular expression, and then use the Try Parse just for safety